confession to make. Last night at 9:29 p.m., I found myself at the verge of my laptop screen, thinking and contemplating of what I will tell you this afternoon. For 30 minutes, I found myself going round and round at the living room of our house, talking to my mother, who is in your seats right now, by the way, thinking to myself, how will I deliver this talk? Well, I guess you're thinking what I'm thinking. This girl is a coward. But before we go to that conclusion this afternoon, I want to challenge you with something. Maybe when you enter this room, someone gave you a piece of paper. Would that be correct? Do you guys have your piece of paper right now? Okay, I challenge you to bring it out. I'm gonna give you some time to get your piece of paper. There you go. Can I see a show of those papers right now? Thank you so much, guys. So now, with the piece of paper that you have, I challenge you to think. What would be the first thing that you will do with it? What would you write? What will you draw? Or much better, what will you create out of it? I'm gonna give you a brief moment to think. Now that I gave you a few seconds, can you tell me what you felt while you were thinking? Anyone? What did you feel in one word?
Scared.
Scared? Anyone else?
Curious.
Curious. I love that. Maybe some of you felt terrified. What a pressure it is to suddenly, on the spot, think about anything that you're gonna write or do with that paper. Or maybe some of you felt excited. Did anyone feel excited?
Yes.
Thinking about a lot of possibilities, right? That you can do with that paper. Or maybe there are those of you who felt nothing really special. But, like what Miss Nicole said, you remained curious and continued to challenge your mind, even just for a little bit, to think of something that you can create. Or quite possibly, you can fall under the fourth category. You didn't think about anything at all. It's okay, that's fine. Maybe you're thinking, it's just another TED Talk, isn't it? Well, here's the catch. In just a few minutes, I'll show you how even a single blank page, the one that you're holding right now, can become the starting point of something extraordinary, and how you, too, are more than capable of creating what you didn't even think was possible. Let me begin by going back to 2020. Try to recall yourself during that year. Around January, what were you doing? Maybe you're strolling around the streets, having your Dalgona coffee, or maybe you're doing your laundry or doing some dance craze in the internet. I don't know. You think about it. How about March of that year? Okay, let me help you by refreshing your mind. Maybe you can remember some dark skies due to some volcanic eruption. Or maybe you remember seeing these face masks left and right. Your eyes are glued to your phones, to your gadgets, and everything in between. Are your minds with me right now?
Yes.
Lastly, maybe you can recall that for most of us, pretty much, we were in our rooms, locked into its four corners. During that time, all of us have felt different things, and maybe some felt that we're back to zero. Some may have been induced by fear. The fear of having, or more so, being nothing. But amidst that time, I want to tell you a story of some people who have created something from nothing. 3 years prior to that, there's a group of youths who have found themselves doing some crazy things. Together, they found themselves diving into mud, blowing flour to their faces, diving their heads into warm slime. Yeah, it's a bit kadiri, right? But together, they saw themselves soaked up together at a water station. Another picture that you can see on the screen is a set of outreach programs the similar group conducted. However, 3 years later, the same group has found themselves in the same spot as everyone else, afraid and tired of everything that was happening, and maybe they were even a bit hopeless. But they didn't stop there. They thought to themselves, in the midst of everything that we can't control, why don't we take a leap of faith and start to create something of our own? Why don't we be courageous enough to try through something new, something that is not just impactful to ourselves, but more so beneficial to the people around us? In the midst of such a hopeless situation, these kids were driven by faith, hope, and our theme today, love. You guessed that right. I was one of them. However, as I thought about what we can do, I fell in love with the endless possibilities that we can produce as a group. I felt the excitement, the adrenaline rush as I realized everything that we can do moving forward. But as I was starting to dig in and do the work, I started to feel that inevitable fear. Fear of the cost of risk, or most commonly known as the fear of failure. After doing some studies and research on the quintessence of what I was experiencing, psychologists call it anticipatory anxiety, I discovered. According to some researchers, this is how the uncertainty of possible future threat, in this case, one that comes along creating or starting something new, prohibits potential creators and even visionaries like you and me to totally avoid the scenario or to mitigate its negative impact. Or to cut the long story short, studies show that when we anticipate possible failure, parts of our brain light up with signals similar to physical threat. Mind you, these are all in the mind. Moreover, approximately 300 university students found a positive and significant relationship between the fear of failure and, this might be familiar with you, procrastination. Anyone else fell victim to that?
Yes.
Yeah, I thought it was just me. So students who fall victim to these two are not necessarily incompetent and incapable of doing great things. In fact, I think that they can be excellent. But the problem is, they're afraid of failing, hence delaying or worse, even avoiding starting at all. These studies show us that fear and anticipatory anxiety goes beyond getting nervous. It makes you decrease or gets discouraged following through, delay your action, and erode your confidence. For someone who is born to create, this can translate to ideas remaining to be a concept of the mind, not yet a reality. Ideas that never get started. Now, I want you to keep on holding to that piece of paper because the story doesn't end there. Here's the good news. Having fear is okay. It's an emotion. It makes you human. And I want you to start thinking about it on a different lens. That having fear can actually mean that you're standing right at the edge of a possibility. Again, I'm sorry to bore you with this, but here are some studies that show how overcoming fear aids creativity, resilience, and eventually what we want, success. A study on creativity and resilience found that individuals with high levels of both creativity and resilience were more likely to achieve objective and subjective career success. That means that people who can endure challenges and produce creative ideas tend to translate ideas into real success. Another study on academic resilience found that the capacity to bounce back after a setback, persist, and adapt significantly correlates with achievement outcomes. That means that individuals who manage adversity and negative emotions effectively tend to perform better over time. What is this suggesting? This suggests that when fear or uncertainty arises, resilience helps bridge the gap between idea and execution. But before you get to choose to be resilient, you have to have the courage first. Now, let's go back to the story of these young kids that I left earlier, and maybe you can take some lessons here too. Lesson number 1. In the midst of fear, choose to be driven by hope and love. As I have mentioned, during the pandemic, amidst the suffering of many, our group decided to do something beautiful out of it. It bore fruit to Abot-Kamay Philippines. It is a youth-led organization that aims to bridge the gap between the people who have the heart to help and people who are in need. Having nothing much to ourselves during that era of close to emptiness, our group chose to cling on to hope, do the thing that we love, which is to serve other people, towards the people that we love. Lesson number 2. Sometimes, stepping back is the best form of courage that you can have. Throughout the experimental stage of what we were doing, the 18-year-old in me couldn't help but to feel fear, which unfortunately led me to quit from the organization. It was a moment of heartbreak. Did anyone else feel that kind of heartbreak? It felt like I was leaving the very purpose that I promised first to myself that I will fulfill, and second to the people who put their faith in me. In short, I felt like a failure. But still, I took the courage to step back, pause, and breathe. And lo and behold, that pause gave me just enough time to create these visions, ones that wouldn't have happened if I didn't take a step back. Lesson number 3. Have faith and take the risk. After a while, I decided to go back to the organization. And to cut the long story short, I have embraced the vision, raised my faith, and taken the risk. Now, by grace, I am leading the organization which helped and is helping hundreds of Filipinos who are falling into victims of different calamities, social issues, and injustices. On the surface, some people have always seen these activities as a success, and maybe it actually is. But what most didn't see is something richer, that before going to this point, it was necessary for me to go through a series of failures, setbacks, criticisms, and even a bunch of rejections. But in times like this, what's important is to take one leap of faith after another and gather the courage to take steps that will eventually lead to monumental milestones. Now, you may think that this kind of story isn't for you, or maybe our stories aren't alike. Yes, I agree with you. Maybe it actually isn't. But what if I'm here to tell you that we have something more similar than you think? That regardless of what idea that you have, the one that you're thinking right now that you want to do in your paper, regardless of its size or cost, the same amount of courage and the same willingness to act despite fear lies within you. That after all those huge ideas of yours, they can be realized too, because you can do it too. Now enough about me. Let's talk about you. Between who you are today and who you can become lies a blank space. Undefined, alive, and oozing with endless possibilities. Those ideas that are quietly forming in your mind, the initiatives that you want to start, the projects that you want to launch, or even those stories that you've always wanted to tell. The dreams that you think are too big for you to grasp, hold on to them. Or better yet, write them down. It's understandable for you to feel fear and hesitation just upon thinking about them. You may feel unsure, uncertain, and even doubtful, and that's just fine. I really understand. But I urge you to pause and silence your mind, because it is in this space and moment that a beautiful creation can begin. In a blank space, there is nothing. But what exists is the tension between something non-existent to something beautifully created. One that is void, to something that can become beautiful and whole. A blank space may be empty, but it holds the potential for everything you could create. In the middle of the blank space lies a decision for you to stay put and do nothing, or to finally have the courage to move and create something. Now, I want you to do the same thing we did in the first part of our time today, but this time, have more courage. Look at your blank piece of paper again. Come on. Look at that paper. I'm gonna ask you the same questions. What will you do with it? What will you write? What will you draw? Or perhaps, what will you create? The decision is yours.